Okay, good evening everyone. It's Graham Healy, and tonight, it's taken me a while to get around to this, but what I'm going to do is to discuss the philosophy of Yunjun so that you've got a deeper understanding, and it also just depends on people's journey or where they're at in time and space. So as we go through here, we'll just read it through to you. And the philosophy is based on love, care and protection of all living things. Yunjun is part of self-cultivation. Its philosophy is based on the love, care and protection of all things, and its ultimate aim is one of self-enlightenment. I mean, that's a lot to think about, and we'll go into that in a second. I just want to do the overview at the moment. The goal of Yunjun is to find the inspiration and motivation to achieve the ultimate victory of self-perfection. Only through refinement of the spirit and the determination can the battle for the inner peace and harmony be won. Now I'll just read this out and I'll go back to a few points. Through an understanding of the art and its philosophy, a Yunjun practitioner is consistently challenged to expand his or her horizons in both knowledge and practice. The highest principle of ethics and morality are cultivated. A Yunjun student is not only expected to understand but live by the 5 virtues of humility, justice, courtesy, wisdom and trust. As I say, I'll get back to these in a second. Through perseverance, dedication and practice of Yunjun, you can provide students with the means of achieving great fulfillment in their lives. It is based on self-discovery, and the challenge lies in the pursuit of perfection. However, in understanding the purpose of Yunjun, one should realize that the ultimate victory of self-perfection is not as important as striving for this goal. What we learn, how we grow, and who we become as people in the process are the keys to discovering the purpose and direction of our lives. Only through an understanding of ourselves, our goals, our limitations, and our potential can we hope to add meaning to our lives and of others. The goal of building a world of peace and harmony begins first with the goal of improving ourselves. We all have much to contribute individually, and it is only by all of us lighting our own candles that we can together create light for others to benefit from our strength and warmth. With this goal in our hearts, there can be no doubt that Yunjun will continue to grow and play a significant role in the betterment of humankind. Grandmaster Yun Q Yun. Now, that's a lot that's said there, but let me break it down. And mind you, I'm this Grandmaster Yun meditating there at the Master Sports Centre. Mind you, this is all relevant to your journey where you're at. So I'm 67 as I record this, so I've been through a lot of hard knocks, like we all have, and over those particular periods of time, you're on a learning curve, basically. Now, I'm giving it my perspective, so you can add your perspective in. I'll give you an example. For instance, I read the book by Miyamoto Musashi, the Book of 5 Rings, and I strongly suggest that you actually read that book. But the first time I read that book, I had a certain level of understanding, and of course, those who don't know, Miyamoto Musashi was Japan's greatest samurai. And I had, when I initially read that book when I was fairly young, it was a bit confusing at the end, where it had the Book of Void, or what Miyamoto saw as a spiritual realm, really. And as I went through life's experiences, that last chapter in Miyamoto Musashi's book started to make sense to me, especially when I did a lot of training both in boxing and taekwondo, and of course I was a founding instructor for Yunjando and etc. So when I go through this, don't think that I'm basically trying to paint some picture for you. All I'm doing is explaining how I see it at this point in time. You may see it slightly differently because you're on your own journey, right? We're all on that journey in pursuit of perfection, so to speak. Now, the Grand Master himself is, of course, I've been associated with the Grand Master since about 1985, and it's now 2022, so it's 30 or 40 years. Now, I haven't been associated with him, I had my periods where I did my own thing, did the Bruce Lee thing, absorb what's useful, disregard the best. But myself and the Grand Master got back about 6 years ago, and my purpose, I feel, is to build the second generation of Yunjando. He built the first generation. He was a first generation Taekwondo master, and then he became the founder of Yunjando, and I was with a team of 4. I was one of the original Yunjando instructors. So basically, I look at it, I invested my time, energy, effort and finances into founding Yunjando with the Grand Master back in 1989. And so I suppose that I'm part of history, and I trained full time with the Grand Master and became one of his international instructors to Papua New Guinea, with John Chilai and Vincent Penny et al. Okay, now we'll just go through here and I'll just put my perspective on stuff. Now, love, care and protection of all living things. You think, now, hang on, I'm a martial arts instructor. Where does that apply? Well, let me describe this to you. A lot of today's martial arts are focused on tournaments. And, I've been a boxer, and I've been a competitive boxer, so, the spirit of love, care and protection, I suppose, was in our boxing gym between my associates. But when you got in the boxing ring, that went out the door, and the objective was to knock the opponent out. Now, unfortunately, the pathway of many of the martial arts heading towards so-called tournaments is contrary to the philosophy of martial arts in general. Martial arts in general is a way of life and a philosophy, and there's a spiritual side to it which I'll go into in a second. The difference between what I did originally with with Taekwondo under General Choi and Grandmaster Yun, before General Choi passed away, was all the first generation masters, of which Grandmaster Yun was one, of course. They all were ex-Korean Army, right? So, and the famous or infamous Tiger Division of the Korean Army, all Taekwondo masters that participated in the Vietnam War against the Viet Cong, have a look at the front page or the lead page to yunjando-healy.com, and you'll read about the Korean Tiger Division. Those guys killed the enemy with their bare hands. Now, not much love, care and protection in that, but they're in a war zone, right? So what I'm saying is the difference between martial art and sport, there's really no comparison. There's a whole different mindset. So the mindset with martial art is that the techniques that you're practicing are basically what I would call the military style techniques where the focus from a physical point of view is self-preservation. Now when it becomes self-preservation and or your family's preservation, the intensity of what you deliver is 110%. Whereas you go to the sporting arena and then you got all these rules, you got all this stuff going on, you got, they're all got focus pads on and shin pads and body shields and all the rest of it. So they really take a lot of reality out of the martial art. So the martial art was never designed to be a sport. And when they take it into a so-called sport, they really lose the art part of it. So as far as Yun Jun Do is concerned, we're a martial art, or as Grandmaster Yun says, a human art. Now, the human art side of it, he means personal development by human art. All right. Now, Yun Jun Do is the art of self-cultivation. It's a philosophy based on love, care and protection of all things, and its ultimate aim is one of self-enlightenment. Now, I'm not going to get religious with any of this, but self-enlightenment is a big statement. So how do you enlighten yourself? Well, there are many pathways, I suppose, to self-enlightenment, and depend on what your belief systems are. I mean, you could be a Buddhist, you could be, of the Christian faith, as I am. And when I say that, I'm not religious. I'm a believer. You could be, the Muslim faith. You could be of the any one of the the Indian guru type faiths. Primarily, the centre of all those belief systems is love, care and protection. The old statement straight out of the scriptures, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the guts of the Ten Commandments. So, that's when you focus on the love factor. It's an interesting subject, because what is it? You question yourself. So what is love? It's not lust. Lust is the opposite. So love is something that radiates out and cares about people. And I've done I'm actually a credentialed minister as well. Not that I use that much these days, but I have done in-depth studies of the Bible and what have you. But in the book of John, not the Gospel, but the John 1, 2 and 3, you've got a clear statement that says God is love. So that when you talk about that, whatever you believe, and I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but there's a universal belief that love, care and protection of all living things is really at the core of the human existence. And without that, basically you would just be nothing more than an animal, I suppose. And even animals care about each other, some of them, so that's what I wanted to say about there. Now, when you get down the art of self-cultivation, without discipline, I've been training since I've been 14 or 47 now, so over 50 years. I've found the art of self-cultivation or discipline extremely important in my life regarding my health. Pretty healthy for a 67-year-old. I look around the other 67-year-olds and they're all washed up. And the reason they're washed up is their health factor. They don't look after themselves, they don't train, they don't do anything. just smoke cigarettes and drink, or think that's their form of entertainment. My form of entertainment, and hopefully your form of entertainment, is actually training, beneficial training. So we go down the goal of Yunjin Do. Only through refinement of the spirit and determination can the battle of the inner peace and harmony be won. People say to me, what's inner peace? What's harmony? There's. I can just speak to you from my perspective that, without going into all the detail or my life experience and doing a big story here, which I'm not going to do, I can just tell you this: never make a decision on anything unless you have inner peace about it, inner peace and harmony. Now, you may spend regular time meditating, you may spend regular time, like I work, part of my subcontract work is I work on a property behind Mount Cootha, and so I'm up there on my own in bushland basically for about 4 hours a day, and in that time I go through, it's actually walking and working meditation. Sometimes I'll listen to I could be listening to scripture tapes sometimes, meditating on the scriptures. I could be listening to, various other things, or I'm just sort of being in harmony with the surroundings. And we've got about, probably about 5 cattle dogs up at the property, so the animals all around me, and they're very therapeutic. As people know, I've got dogs as pets. They're very therapeutic, and they become basically your friends. So there's a lot that can be said with inner peace and harmony with your surrounding environment. So it's like, our friends in on the South Pacific Islands, in Fiji, and the Solomon Islands, and up in Papua New Guinea and Samoa. I sort of feel a bit envious to a degree with those guys and girls up there, because they're living in a harmonious situation where they're living on an idyllic islands or idyllic villages, and there's a few battles and difficulties sometimes, but generally speaking they're all in touch with nature, and there's plenty of time to meditate on a hill on the South Pacific Island somewhere. So that's just an example, because Grandmaster Yun was in charge of the whole South Pacific with Taekwondo, so a lot of the instructors remember all this. So you go through your refinement of spirit and determination. The battle of the inner peace and harmony can be won. So all I can say on that is, whatever way you meditate, be it, you could be a church goer perhaps, you could be just a person who, spends time meditating in nature, or whatever way you want to do it. The key is inner peace before you make a decision on anything. And the battle of the inner self is what we speak about. And I remember writing the original brochures and having a great conversation with the Grandmaster about this, because everyone in themselves has this battle within themselves. It's like good and evil. And if you really want to read about that in the Bible, so to speak, you can read Romans 7 and 8. You just read those 2 chapters and you'll find the Apostle Paul talking about the battle of the inner self. So again, that's just my slant on that, and where you see yourself coming from, that's fine. But when you make a decision, do not do it out of a tormented heart. Right? Make certain that your heart is at peace. And here's another little tip. Always have integrity at the moment of choice. That's like out of the Stephen Covey 7 Effective Habits. Integrity at the moment of choice. So peace and harmony, integrity at the moment of choice. Anyway, we go down here. Yunjando student is not only expected to understand, but live by the five virtues of humanity. It is, which is humility, justice, courtesy, wisdom, and trust. So humility doesn't mean you're some sort of sniveler. It means that, well, this is my perspective on it, and I've been training people for a long time, and myself. Humility means you realise you don't know everything. I mean, I've just, in the last subject of medical science at university, so I've been, training and studying for, over 6 years now, going into 6 years. And plus I've got a master's certification in dry needling, which requires university level anatomy and physiology to even get into those courses. So I'm telling you, and you the people listening to this who have been to higher education, you know that you got to have a humble attitude to learn. You can't go in with an arrogant attitude. So humility is very important. And even if you're a tradesman on a work site, the arrogant ones no one wants to have anything to do with. If you're an apprentice, you've got to have a humble attitude to be able to learn your trade, right? That's the same in martial arts / human art, as we call it in Yunjando. So that's covered that subject. So justice, never compromise with injustice. That's a big one. There's a lot of things that will come against you in this life, and you'll be tempted to step aside, ignore it or whatever. But deep down inside, people have this desire to do what's right and see what's right being done. So it doesn't always rely on the law or the police to implement justice, because even they can be corrupted. Like we've just had in Australia for 2 years, we've had mandates and lockdowns for 2 years. None of that's been legal on the constitutional analysis. So I won't necessarily go there on this. Now, courtesy is just mutual respect. So courtesy is part of it. People pretend to be courteous, especially in martial arts. Yes master, no master, 3 bags full master. But at the end of the day, it has to come from the heart, not your head. And people know when you're disingenuous, right? Now, wisdom, one of my old mentors, a Chinese guy called Keith Loy. So, I went through Bible college and what have you, and Keith was one of my original mentors, and he said 1 ounce of experience equals 10 ton of theory. So wisdom really has a lot to do with life experience, because you can't learn wisdom out of a book. It comes with age and experience. So, that's how I see wisdom. Now, trust, in martial arts, unfortunately, in my experience, I don't really come, not a lot of trustworthy people in martial arts, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean you don't have to be like that. So, to be trustworthy, you have to screen and trust others. But my advice on the trust factor is you be very careful in trusting just anyone. Have a look at their character. Have a look at their character over time. I usually look at the fruit of what someone says to what someone does. They can say a lot of stuff, sounds good. Well, let's see what they do over time. And then you'll see a pattern. Are they trustworthy? And my advice is, yes, people must earn trust, and trust comes from long-term relationship. So over time, if someone finds you trustworthy, it'll be based on building a solid integrity-based relationship. And to be quite frank, that's few and far between. There's too many people running around with their agenda. It's all about them. They're on the what I call the dark side, right? Through perseverance, dedication, and etc. of Yunjin Do, students, a means of achieving greater fulfillment in their lives. It is based on self-discovery, and the challenges lies in the pursuit of perfection. Now, the pursuit of perfection is a pretty big call. No one's perfect. I like to sort of look at that as if we're sharpening the sword. So we're sharpening and refining and learning continuously. So, as we get older, hopefully, like a good wine, we mature and gain wisdom, courtesy, trust, justice, all those things. But you have to have a core values for that to be achieved. So I find that over in my lifetime, discipline in physical training, be it martial arts / human art, be it the boxing I used to or still do, that physical training resets the discipline, and you feel good from it anyhow. Even though you're sore, tired and all that, you get the right nutrition, you get the right periodization, you get the right cycling, and you feel like you can take on the world. So especially with Yunjin Do training done properly, the stretching and the way we do explosive power and all that sort of stuff. Of course, that depends on the instructor, of course. Grandmaster Yun was a great, and still is a good instructor, a good mentor. But everything in this game comes down to the instructor, and the instructor must set the example. Lead by example. The goal of building a world of peace and harmony begins first with the goal of improving ourselves. You can hardly build a world of peace and harmony if you're a grub, right? We all have much to contribute individually, and only by all of us lighting our own candles that we can together create enough light for others to benefit in their warmth and strength. Now, when the Castledine headquarters was kicked off, we had this beginning of Yunjin Do ceremony, and the Grandmaster, we had all the different countries. We had, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, New Zealand, Australia, Fiji, England, other countries, and we had this ceremony where basically we played John Lennon's Imagine All the People, living in harmony, and I sing that at karaoke sometimes, so remind me of that next time you see me. And we had the candle lighting ceremony, which was really super cool, and it was like bringing all these different cultures with different religions even all together under one banner. So that was the peace and harmony thing. And the Grandmaster's focus these days, he's 82 now, his focus these days is he wants to establish a peace foundation. And the peace foundation is something we can talk about later on, but it's a non-profit section of Yunjin Do, which is basically a foundation for helping the poor and needy and all that. And that's at the end, that's at the bottom of, or at the top of the Grandmaster Yun's heart, and that's where I certainly see him and his good wife functioning in that role in his latter years. His active years are, even though he still trains a lot himself, he still trains every day, but he's delegating the functional side of Yunjin Do to instructors such as myself and other key trusted instructors. So okay, let's go down to I did a couple of brochures up, these brochures that I did for the students, and you can see the iconic kick of Grandmaster Yun there. Let's bring it into. I did this one up here where the Grandmaster's doing Mukong, and that's focusing centre of energy. That's what he's doing there. And I did that setting there, you know, the Japanese or Korean garden in the background. The 5 virtues of humanity: humility, justice, courtesy, wisdom and trust, and the philosophy based on the spirit of love, care and protection of all things. If you can basically have that at the centre of your training. Now, I've actually done up banners with this on, particularly looks like this. And of course this is the Grandmaster with his iconic vertical side kick in the good old Taekwondo days. And yeah, I love that. I've got t-shirts with that done on it as well. So he was super flexible, and he still is super flexible, and I'm still working on my flexibility, right? So these the key element here, if I really would like you to remember it, or just, I've got little A5 flyers, laminated flyers with this on. One's on the front, one's on the back. If you want to print this out, if you're a Yun Jin Do practitioner and you want to print these out, just print them out on colour paper, turn them over, and then laminate them, and then you can, you know, you can use them yourselves. Quite happy to. Now, when we go over here, that's in Chinese, and the reason why it's in Chinese is that the Korean symbols don't translate, have as much meaning as Chinese symbols. And from what I remember the Grandmaster telling me, that is, you know, goes along the lines as, you know, the founder of Yun Jin Do, the Way, Grandmaster Yun, and this little symbol down there is a Jun, which means justice, humility, justice, righteousness. He always had the Jun, which is up here. Jun, Yun Jin Do, Jun. Jun, that's the symbol of the club. That means justice, righteousness, integrity. That's it's a universal symbol. You see it in a lot of different martial arts. I'll recognise that, but that's the symbol Jun. Now here, I didn't know what these meant, but the Grandmaster told me that's all the patterns in Chinese. So that it has meaning in Chinese. Of course, that's the Grandmaster meditating there, of course. Now, this is a membership with the adult membership oath. And, you know, I mean, I read that out. At gradings, the Grandmaster asks people to repeat this back to him, because it's very important. He's thought about this very carefully. And so we just go through it, you know, at all times. Number one, I will at all times be courteous to members of my family, members of an organisation, and members of society. Now, of course, I'll just take this over here. I mean, this emanates from the 5 virtues of humanity, right? Now, number 2, so, you know, this is basically courteousness. Be courteous to everyone you come into contact with, because you be courteous, they're courteous back. You be arrogant, they won't talk to you, right? Number 2, I will exercise a maximum self-control in all situations. Now that comes under wisdom a bit there, because, you know, I don't know what, you know, I'm not perfect in that area, and I've had to deal with a lot of fairly heavy conflict situations, even armed robberies. You can read about that on my website. And being an ex-boxer, and I've got an Irish background, you can imagine that I can, when I'm triggered, I've got to exercise maximum self-control, because the negative people in this world will trigger your emotions, and some of them actually are very good at doing that. So just be careful there. And my advice there, and coming from someone who's had to deal with a lot of fairly nasty situations is step back and don't react to negative people generally. Usually they're not happy with themselves. That's what I find. And if you're not happy with yourself, you try and inflict other stupid things on people, and funnily enough, they, temporarily it makes them feel good because they're unhappy with themselves. That's the best way I can put it, in my experience anyhow. So, treat all those, I'll put myself down here, I'll put over here, it's probably better. I will treat all those with whom I come into contact with the utmost kindness and consideration. Again, that sort of comes under courtesy again. I'll never compromise with injustice. Here we go, justice. So, if something's wrong, don't allow that situation to go away. You will more than likely have to be the person who has to say, well, hang on, that's not right, and stand your ground. Now, martial arts / human art, what we're doing, it helps you by all this discipline, training, kicking, bag work, all that, no competition, and train your own pace and all the rest of it, mind, body, spirit, balance. It helps you to stand your ground. Especially in my case, the boxing especially helped me stand my ground in a lot of fairly tense situations, and the martial art training certainly adds a big dimension on that, because not only are you competent with your hands, next minute you're competent with your kicks, and just like if you're competent with a samurai sword in the Miyamoto Musashi days, if you draw the sword, someone's going to get seriously hurt. So you've got to think about that. Think about it very carefully. Never compromise with injustice. I will set a good example as a pure, upright and loyal representative of my instructors and my organisation. That goes back to integrity again, and trust. And, everything will reflect. I always say, if you see a good crew, it's a good captain. So in an organisation, if it's a bad crew, you've really got a bad captain. So that side of it, you'll set a good example as pure, upright and loyal representative of my instructors and organisation. That'll directly reflect on the instructor a lot, because if he's a good guy, funnily enough, he'll draw other good people around him, and he'll build a good relationship based on trust, integrity and the character traits that you should have if you're a good martial arts instructor / Yun-Jun-Do instructor / any good martial arts instructor will have really care about his students. They're a big family. They're your brothers and sisters, and that's the way you've got to look at it. And sometimes, because as an instructor, you're sort of like the father of the family, you've got to make some hard decisions. You've got to make some decisions to pull some students up sometimes. Sometimes you might lose a few because of it, but they'll go on the roundabout and come back. And they might not come back too. But, as long as what you're doing, you're clear in your conscience what decisions you make. And sometimes you've got to, cut out the negatives to keep the positives going. And then will uphold the responsibilities of a citizen, and to uphold in every way the honour of my country. So, no matter where you are, no matter what country you're in, no matter what country you represent, patriotism is an honourable thing. Well, it used to be. When I say that, in these days, especially when we've come out of 2 years of lockdown with mandated experimental injections and all this sort of stuff, you sort of double think that a little bit. But there are good people in government, and you just seek them out and make certain that they're the ones that come to the forefront when you vote for them. And you look through, these days it's very hard for politicians to lie and not get caught out, because you've got social media. Everything they say is on the record. You can turn up at a meeting and take your own video if you want to. So the transparency is becoming increasingly easier, whereas in my earlier year, you'd think you wouldn't even know of half the corruption with some politicians, so to speak, when I'm talking about honour of your country. So you know what I'm talking about. You take that, in perspective, etc. So that's the end of it there. That's my website there. There's yunjando.com, which is the Grand Masters, yunjando-healy.com, which is my hybrid website. So that's the tutorial on the spirit of love, care and protection, and the basis of the philosophy of Yunjando. So I've given you my perspective on it. Each instructor may have a slightly different perspective, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to building relationships with students. It's not just about teaching them technique, although that's important, and it's important. All the physical stuff's great. Yep, that's great too. But when you take the competition out of it, and that's what we're adamant about, we take the competition out of it so that you're not trying to compete with someone, and because when you get competition, you get ego, you get people getting hurt, and when you doing like full powered side kicks and spinning heel kicks, you're going to hurt people if you're hitting them. But hitting shields, you can go for it. Do jumping kicks into the punching bag, great, go for it. But no go do jumping kicks into your training partner, because they're a human being. And you just reserve that sort of reaction to pure self-defense. And then when you do that, the law is actually on your side, if it's proportional. Now, I won't go into that too much, but there's this is in Queensland, Australia. You've got Criminal Code 1899, and you can go on to yunjando-healy.com. Go to the bottom of the page, and you can download that legislation in Queensland. And basically what that means, in a court of law, if you're doing martial arts, if you're doing anything, any assault, any defence, any sort of defence, it will boil down to Criminal Code 1899, which is proportionate defence and counterattack. So if someone hits you with a feather, and you come out with a lump of 3B2 and hit them back, you're the one who's committing assault. So it's proportionate. So in your self-defense journey, if you really know what you're doing and you're trained up to the minute, you can control a lot of stuff that you learn. That in itself is what the confidence is all about. You don't need to hit someone with a devastating spinning heel kick to the temple or something like that because they've slapped you or something, as an example. You might just neutralise the person there, put them in an arm lock or something. So that's when I'm talking proportionate defence. So that way you're morally in the right direction, and you know in your own conscience that you haven't overreacted. Now, I can go in that in a bit more detail because I've trained prison wardens, police, some army, etc., and they're all different perspectives. But and I've had some students that have had very serious self-defense situations, and of course the main one I had in 1985 is when I defended against a fully blown armed robbery. The robber had a fully loaded shotgun, and I neutralised him, but that wasn't easy because they're all geared up. A lot of the times they're on drugs these days and all sorts of stuff. So, however, my reaction in that situation, you can read about, it's got black belt, hero, foils armed robbery. It made the front page of the news and everything. This is in Townsville, 1985. I defended myself. I took the weapon off this character, and you can read about it on the website. And I didn't even have to go to court because I just defended myself, and this character was actually a jump bail out of jail. So when I talk about legalities and proportionate responses, a lot of the martial arts clubs have no idea. I watch, for instance, I teach Krav Maga as well, Commando Krav Maga, and I watch on the internet all these characters teaching Krav Maga, and they're just over the top. So they're teaching, even in Queensland here, they're teaching people to react super violently, and you don't have to. A real professional can neutralise someone in 1 or 2 moves. And I won't go into that in great detail, but those of you who really know what you're doing, you know that. You look at some of the top Wing Chun Kung Fu guys, you look at Grandmaster Yun, even myself, and I've neutralised attackers just with 1 move, bang. I don't know what hit them. So, you've got to use that love, care and protection factor, and you've got to listen to your voice. You've got to remain in harmony. And see, just in closing, I'm not training for the sake of beating someone up. That's not my motivation. My motivation for training is health and well-being, and the system of training gives me a lot of... It's a positive way to spend my energy, not a negative way. In other words, a lot of people, they go drinking, nightclubs, even if they're younger and they get old, they're still drinking and think that that's a good time or whatever. Well, to me, that doesn't interest me. I'd be training, refining myself, getting sharp, specific, learning new techniques, going to university, doing medical science. That's great. I've done all the personal training, dry needling courses, all this, plus the discipline of Yun Jun Do and Taekwondo and boxing has allowed me to discipline myself for studies, so that a parent that's looking at their children doing Yun Jun Do training or a good martial arts club is the same thing. That child will be disciplined so they can more focus on their studies. And at the end of the day, it all boils down to who the instructor is. I'm telling you now. With boxing, same thing. Who's the boxing coach? Who's the martial arts coach? Who's the swimming coach? Fortunately, I had Grandmaster Yun as my coach as I was a full-time instructor. So I was trained under him full-time. And that was my objective, to learn off the best. And the best thing I can tell you, listening to this video, is the key in all my training is I haven't gone to the worst. I haven't gone to just anyone. I haven't gone to Billy Bloggs down the road who reckons he knows martial arts. I've gone to the best and learned off them, and then that's what I'm teaching students. And we do that with a moral code of ethics, which is written, what I've just spoken to you about here. Okay, I hope that helps. It's Graham Healy over and out. And anyone who's done Yun Jun Do before, they can read this, because everyone sort of reads it and they're on a different journey. There might be 20. They read this and they, what's love, care and protection about? They could be 30. They might make a bit more sense. They could have gone through life's journey, and as they do that, this makes, read it again, think, oh yeah, that's a bit different. And as I say, each level of where you are in your own personal development, it'll have a slightly different perspective. But I've just put my perspective on it from doing 50 years of training. Okay, Graham Healy over and out. Have a good day, and hope that helps.